The tools that have gotten our users these type of results have become even more powerful. And now with our completely revamped offerings, anyone can leverage Stokastic's cutting-edge products to dominate this football season. In addition to our contest simulation tools, we've added our new single lineup simulator, where you can get instant feedback on the quality of your hand-built lineups in seconds. And all of our other industry-leading data will be waiting for you when you get here as well. So stop guessing and start winning with Stokastic.
What is going on, guys? It is time for another MLB Live Before Lock. Who knows what could happen in baseball? The games could play with no issues. They could go 4 pitches into the game. It starts pouring out of nowhere. The games could be canceled. You never know. But that's what we're going to be breaking down. Myself and Eric Lindquist here. So if you guys could do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to Underdog, who is sponsoring today's show. And Eric, we've got a 8-game slate tonight. We've got some potential weather issues, although last night it didn't look like we were going to have any kind of weather issues. And then what happens? Storms come out of nowhere and just completely screwed up my lineups. Was it the same for yourself last night?
Well, I had like 65% Arrighetti in the $3 because in my top 20, he was, higher owned than I had in just my 150 set. And then I finished in the top 10 in the $3 with like the one Castillo and Schwellenbach. And then what was the stack that I had? I can't even remember, but I ended up making money on this slate yesterday with my highest owned pitcher, not named Luis Castillo, being Andrew Heaney. So very fun, very fun.
Yeah, that Rangers White Sox game that got postponed today, that was not kind to yours truly there, but at least for today, it doesn't look like tonight there's any games that I'm going to have to pull out of my lineups because of the weather. There's nothing I'm looking to avoid entirely if anything changes. And also, I mean, for last night's slate, it really was weather that came out of nowhere. The White Sox had even tweeted about it. They'd said like, hey, unforeseen weather patterns here. They started the game, they got 4 pitches into it, and then the game gets, I've never seen anything like that where a game goes 4 pitches in, because usually you would assume that if a team thought there was even a chance of rain, you just wait for the rain to pass or something. That was a new one. I've never seen that happen before.
Yeah, it's like the pastor in Tin Cup, where it's just like out of the middle of nowhere. He's playing the round of his life, and then boom, just shows up immediately. Never seen anything like it. Probably never will see like it again. Never seen a rain delay where you didn't have one team even bat in the first half of the inning before having a game get suspended. It was absolutely absurd. As outlier of an outlier as you will ever have in a baseball season.
Hey, shout out to Jeff Williams in the chat there. Says, Hall of Fame, here we go, baby. Took second place in the 762 on DK last night.
Dude.
So shout out to Jeff for crushing last night. I didn't look to see what the final results were. I played in the 760. I tell you, I didn't come in second place in that contest yesterday. Certainly did not, but looks like a good run there for Jeff. So congrats to him for coming in second place. And lots of guys gifting out YouTube memberships here. Chris Williams gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Malukar gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Guitar Z-Man 247, he gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. So all you guys, thank you very much for supporting the channel. We do appreciate it. And yeah, Jeff, if you go out on, I'm pretty sure Jeff has a Twitter account, tweet at us at the Stokastic HOF. And as long as you have the Stokastic avatar there, you get yourself a free subscription. You can either use it on baseball now, or you could wait a week and you could take advantage of it for football, because we got football starting before too long. What do we got? 8 days until the first game of the NFL season next week. We have Thursday night football. We've got Friday night football. And then, of course, the main slate on Sunday. So lots of good things to look forward to. We've also got our college football package. We're going to be rolling that out tomorrow. We've got college football sims this year. So lots of good stuff coming down the pipe. Eric, before we start breaking down the individual pitchers on the slate, any overarching thoughts you have before we start looking into it?
Nope. I'm ready to rock. Nothing special.
Let's go. Let's rock then. And we've got another Coors Field slate today. Coors Field ended up crushing last night, especially the Marlins, who ended up scoring. The Rockies overall were the higher scoring fantasy team. The Marlins looked completely dead and then just scored a ton of runs in the late stages of that game.
Useful.
So we'll see what ends up happening today and how that's going to inform some of our lineups, with it being another Coors Field slate. it is not inhibiting people from being able to pay up at pitcher error because we've got 2 pay up options on the slate. Chris Sale is $11,000 pitching on the road against your Minnesota Twins. He's 36.6% owned. And then Freddie Peralta, he's pitching at home against the San Francisco Giants at $9,800. He is 40.4% owned. So your 2 most popular pitchers on the slate also happen to be the 2 most expensive. It's because the Coors Field game, well, at least partly because the Coors Field game is a little bit underpriced. Do you like both of the pay up options tonight?
Kind of. So I really like getting to Chris Sale. I don't think that Chris Sale has any issues for me whatsoever. Freddie Peralta, I'm getting to, but I'm a little bit underneath the field on him. He's a little bit more popular than Chris Sale. I have a little bit, Jordan Alvarez, 3 homers. There you go. Chris Sale, he's definitely going to be the guy that I have the most exposure to out of anybody here on the top end. I know he's 11K, but I'll say it again. Miami and Colorado is still seriously underpriced. It's so easy to get to on this slate. There are still some other spots that I want to get to, and the Dodgers aren't exactly cheap. Even Baltimore on the other side, not exactly cheap going up against Buehler or this version of Walker Buehler. But Freddie Peralta is pulling a lot of ownership at 9,800. I'm coming in a little bit underweight to him. So sitting at 30% on Freddie Peralta right now, 45% on Chris Sale.
I'm the inverse of you. By the way, I'm overweight to both these pitchers. Overweight to both of them. So I like, even though they're both popular, I like them each. I'm a little bit higher on Peralta. I think it's more of a price point thing just because Peralta is so much cheaper than Chris Sale, getting $1,200 in salary savings. If you do look at our top pitchers tool, we do have Chris Sale projected slightly better, but it's not overwhelmingly better. He's got a 33.5% chance to be one of the 2 top scoring pitchers on the slate. Freddie Peralta, 28.5%. But I mean, ultimately, I've got both of these pitchers in more than half my lineups. I'm eating a lot of the chalk at pitching. It's just not hard to get up to the most expensive pitchers on the slate.
Correct.
And then there's such a big gap. You've got Freddie Peralta's $9,800. Then you got Joe Musgrove's $8,800. So he's $1,000 less expensive than Freddie Peralta. And the other pitchers on the slate, we could talk about some cheap options we potentially like, but I don't think any of the pitchers in the 8K range are especially appealing. And with it being easy to get up to the top end pitchers, I'm just not willing to leave like $1,000, $1,500 in salary on the table to get to like Chris Bassett instead of Freddie Peralta. So I just end up jamming the top pitchers.
I totally get it. Again, there's kind of a weird mid-range. I've got one guy that I'm going to be well overweight to on today's slate. And this is one that I know is going to fall through the cracks. Whereas yesterday, I think you and I landed on the same contrarian pitchers because Andrew Heaney ended up 30%. That was fun times. But I have one guy that I'm going to be playing a lot more of than the field. And then it's just brutality. Like sub 8K is just absolute brutality. And everybody's playing David Festa. So I'm going to stack against David Festa. Just is what it is. I think it's a pretty clear-cut slate on what I want to do today.
Let's talk about the other pitchers then in the 8K range, because we've talked about Sale and Peralta, obviously. They're both really chalk. You brought up David Festa, who's somewhat popular on the low end, but not crazy popular. We'll talk about him in a little bit. He's 26% owned. Basically, every other pitcher on the slate is expected to be contrarian at this point. You brought up that we did end up getting Andrew Heaney, ended up being a little bit higher owned than expected yesterday. In turn, though, still nobody ended up playing Jeffrey Springs. So Springs like the one highlight of the slate for me because he crushed and he was pretty low owned. He came in like, I forget exactly the number depending on the contest, but anywhere from like 13 to 16% owned. And he had himself a pretty big game. In this 8K range, who stands out to you with any of these pitchers? We've got Bassett, we've got Kyle Harrison, Erod, that's Eduardo Rodriguez, Corbin Burns, Joe Musgrove. None of these pitchers are more than 12% owned. And of those, Chris Bassett pitching on the road against the Red Sox is the most popular, 12% owned at any of the 8K pitchers.
Yeah, I'm going to play a lot of Joe Musgrove today. Working through his pitches. What day was it? Last time out against the New York Mets. The guy absolutely rolled. And the only reason that I think that they ended up pulling him towards the end of that game was because he was extremely efficient and they had their entire bullpen intact. He had gone 63, 73, 75 pitches. He went through 7 innings. I think he could have gone longer, but they basically just kind of are going easy on him here. I think 80 plus pitches, 85 pitches for him here with what we saw is kind of a green light special in tournaments. I don't think that there's like anybody else with like strikeout stuff viable underneath Corbin Burns on like this entire slate to like look at. Eduardo Rodriguez, he's still getting built up. We can look at David Festa and talk about what could be upside for him from a strikeout potential perspective. And I'm going to have a little bit, but definitely more interested in stacking against. Joe Musgrove was extremely efficient. And the big thing for me is just seeing him up to like 94 and a half there on the four-seamer and on that sinker, finding a little bit of strikeout upside there. Now, I want to be very clear that like there is a chance that Joe Musgrove continues to be really kitty gloved and he only goes for like 75 pitches here in this one, but I doubt it. I think he has more upside for it, and the wind's flipped. It's going to be blowing in ever so slightly here in St. Louis today. It's 85, 70% humidity, so still decent enough hitting weather, but I looked through this lineup and they have Luke Baker yet again batting cleanup. I needed to have him up there higher. Doesn't help to have Nolan Arenado out there this time around, but I think that there's enough strikeouts there for me where Joe Musgrove can really spike you like that 7-8 strikeouts and be extremely efficient like we just saw against a Mets team in a ballpark that, again, has played smaller for him in Petco this season. As we go into St. Louis for him here, another road start. Dylan Cease ran into some batted ball luck in the first inning, and then it kind of fell apart. But I'm going to be going back to the well considering extremely low owners, really no upside in strikeouts underneath his range whatsoever today.
I don't have more than 10% of any pitcher in the 8K range. Actually, the one I get the most of is Erod, and that is him in 3% of lineups. This price range is dead to me. There's nothing that I really find to be all that interesting or appealing. Like if you were playing any of these guys, I'm not going to tell you can't play them because there are some decent pitchers here. I don't find them in my lineups. Then you brought up Joe Musgrove there. I do get it. I know you brought up concerns about how deep he could be allowed to pitch into the game. He's not been all that great when healthy this year, and he's also pitching through, I believe it's bone spurs in his elbow is what the injury is. He's going to need surgery in the offseason. He's just going to pitch through it for now. So it's kind of like a pain maintenance sort of thing, and then making sure he's good to go for the playoffs. But also, I mean, he's got a 4.43 ERA, 5.18 expected ERA. His strikeout rate this year, it's 22.2%. That's the lowest mark he's had since 2019. So it's hard for me to really want to play Joe Musgrove. If you had to roster somebody for contrarian purposes, like sure, I could understand the reasoning towards getting there. I'm just not getting to anybody in this price range. I don't think it's needed.
Yeah, 12 swinging strikes last time out against a Mets lineup that you don't really think about as being crazy strikeout prone against righties or ever against anybody. They have had a 26.4% K rate against righties over the last 14 days, but part of that is because you had a guy like Joe Musgrove go out and absolutely mow them down there. The Mets traditionally not striking out a ton, and just kind of wild to see such a good outing for him in that spot. So I think for me, I'll buy into potentially there being some kind of a comeback there. Again, it doesn't bear out in like a really pronounced way that all of a sudden he's going to have 85 pitches and he's going to look great, but it's such a limited slate as is. I mean, we have 8 games total. We're not going to know exactly what's going on here with Texas and Chicago to the fullest extent that we want to. They're talking about Chad Kuhl opening, Touki Toussaint getting the ball for most of it. So basically, you've got 7 games, 14 pitchers to pick from. And as I just go through the K props, 4.5, it's not a huge one for Joe Musgrove, but when I look at ceiling projections and when I look at like what it is that we're trying to accomplish here, finishing first in a tournament, 5-6% on Joe Musgrove, if he is potentially, back to his strikeout stuff, having the fastball intact, getting swing and miss, 12 swinging strikes in less than 80 pitches is a pretty decent mark for me. I'll buy into potentially there being something there. But again, he's in 24% of my lineups. I'm not saying you need to be jamming him as much as I am. You could be just as well going 10, 15% and moving on with your life, and I'd be okay with it.
By the way, we got a leadoff single in the bottom of the 8th from Austin Hayes. So Spencer Arrighetti will not be having a no-hitter today. Also, Jordan, a couple of people in Discord sent me lineups. I texted them to you. So Ryan Schindler as well as Ram33. We'll plug your lineups into the single lineups in here, and then we'll see how they look. If they look good, we'll give you guys the thumbs up. If not, we'll tell you guys to potentially rebuild here. And the first one, whose lineup was this one? Is this Rams? All right, so he went with Festa, Peralta as his pitchers, and then what does he have? A Dodgers stack as his primary stack. Let's see, what do I have for the Dodgers as a stack? Yeah, I'm not really getting to the Dodgers for it. Actually, I don't have any 5-man stacks in my top lineups. If we go and look at the top stacks tool, the Dodgers also don't rate out very well. It's a difficult matchup for them, and they're still uber expensive against Corbin Burns. So I don't think this is a great spot to be rostering the Dodgers. Probably want to go with a different primary stack. Eric, Dodgers against Corbin Burns, who, by the way, also the Dodgers still pulling ownership at a really expensive price point against Corbin Burns. Are you looking to roster them against Burns?
A little bit, but not like any pronounced way. I mean, it's basically a means of being contrarian. It's the
They're not
Dodgers.
even that contrarian, though.
Correct. But I'm saying that like there are going to be you got to assume that there are certain bats that are just not going to be showing up in people's lineups. And yeah, they're contrarian, 4.5% ownership share. They're like the 5th lowest owned stack on the slate.
But for a matchup against Corbin Burns, it's not like crazy low owned or anything. They're 4.5% owned, and they're the most expensive team, I think, by a pretty wide margin.
That's the whole point of getting to them, I think, is just like Ohtani, you're going to get lower owned than you generally get Ohtani. Gavin Lux in the lineup, Muncy in the lineup, Freeman. Like, you're going to get a lot of these dudes that, from the left side can still inflict damage on anybody. It's a good hitting environment, good ballpark to be hitting in. The main concern you have is Corbin Burns is #good. He's got a 106 expected ISO against lefties. He's actually been giving up more power to righties, 165 expected ISO with a 14.8 degree launch angle. So maybe some of the righties is like 2 and 3 mans. But yeah, I will say it's not like the Dodgers are going to be like a meaningful part of my slate.
And then the next lineup here, we had the one from Ryan Schindler, which Jordan will plug in a little bit. But yeah, my preference, I think the main reason I think this lineup rates out poorly is just because the Dodgers are so expensive. And then is this Ryan's lineup, Jordan? Yeah, Ryan, your lineup's looking pretty good there. He went with a very contrarian pitchers, Kyle Harrison and David Festa. And then he ended up going with a Colorado Rockies stack. So yeah, it's one way you could definitely differentiate Coors Field is if you don't go with some of the payout pitchers. And this particular lineup does end up looking pretty good. And then Clintwood 83 wants to know what we're liking for cash today and pitchers he was asking about. It just has to be Sale and Peralta, right, Eric?
Yeah, you move on with your life.
Yeah, Sale and Peralta. Let's talk about the cheap pitchers now. We've talked about the expensive options. We've talked about what to me is kind of this dead zone in the 8K range. Let's group every pitcher together that's sub 8K. So this is taking us from Brian Bayo at $7,700 to Kyle Freeland down at $5,500. David Festa's pulling 26% ownership. There is not another pitcher that we have sub 8K that's projected for north of 10% ownership. You got 9% ownership on Brian Bayo, 9% ownership on Kyle Freeland. Let's start with Festa, Eric. You've already talked about wanting to stack against him. Are you going to be looking to roster Festa at all at $6,800?
Yeah, and I mean, the Sims is giving him to you. So, like, for me, I'm going to get to a little bit of him here for sure. And our top 2 pitcher percentage on him, 17.9%. That is extremely high. And in fact, out of everybody in that range, he is the guy that is the most likely sub 7,500 that could show up in your lineups and be the nuts. But David Festa also, I don't think it's being encapsulated how bad he can be from time to time. I mean, at AAA with St. Paul, which is just across the river there in Minneapolis, 1.36 whip in 60 and a third innings, 4 ERA. Yeah, the strikeout stuff is good. I mean, the changeup specifically, he has a changeup that's extremely live. We've been talking about since the day that he showed up in the majors. The strikeout rate came along with it, but like, the hard hit is going to go up from 36.6%. We're going to see a lot of these numbers regress for David Festa. And has he been all right so far? Absolutely. Like, I wouldn't like completely bemoan the fact that, he's gone out and gotten some decent length in some spots. I mean, we've got him to 5 innings and 4 of his first 5 starts. He's had a total of 8 games that he's pitched. We've been thin as far as starting pitching goes as a Twins fan, but we're also now running into spots where he's topping out around 70, 75, and we're not necessarily giving him the full ensemble that we did early on when he was pitching there. He still hasn't exceeded 82 pitches in an entire game. And sure, while Atlanta has been bad on the season against right-handed pitching, 24.3% K rate, 96 WRC plus, there's a lot of guys who are pretty good at hitting changeups in this lineup. Hi, Matt Olson. How are you this fine day? This is still not the exact nut type of spot to be playing a 28% owned David Festa. So yeah, I'm going to be sub 20% for sure.
I'm about even with the field on Festa. I do think if you're rostering a pitcher sub 8K, he's pretty clearly the best one. I'm just about in line with the ownership. I think it's about there. I do agree with what you had said at the top of the show, though. I think it's a great leverage stack to be stacking against him because anybody that's playing a really expensive lineup, they're just going to kind of default to rostering David Festa. And I think that is something that in a matchup against the Atlanta Braves here, we just saw it the other day. Bailey Ober is really popular. What did you and I do? We went ahead, we stacked against Bailey Ober. This is still a team in the Atlanta Braves that, even though it's clearly not the best version of their offense because of all the injuries they've had this year, it's still not a shit offense. And this is a pitcher in David Festa who he's got a 5.2 ERA this year, the 4.2 expected ERA. So there's been a little bit of bad luck there, but still, he's a 30% ground ball rate. Balls are hitting the air against him. He's got a 16.3% home run to fly ball rate. You look at his minor league numbers this year, he had a 24.3% home run to fly ball rate in AAA. So really, really homer prone pitcher. I'll be playing some of them in GPPs, but it also makes sense to be stacking against him. If you are not going to be playing David Festa on the low end, do you have a pitcher you like pivoting to get to instead of him? Because I have one, but it makes me very uncomfortable who lands in lineups.
Is it Walker Buehler?
No, it's not even. It's not Walker Buehler. Thankfully,
yeah, it's gonna be Jack Leiter. Then yeah,
anytime I've rostered any Dodgers pitcher that's cheap and not pulling ownership this year, I think they average scoring like negative 15 fantasy points, dating back to when you and I were chasing Bobby Miller and even some Walker Buehler starts earlier in the year. So it is not Walker Buehler. I could understand if somebody said that you just want to take a bet on talent, but Walker Buehler seems pretty broken to me.
Yeah, it's been really bad. The guy I'm going to be taking shots on is Jack Leiter against the White Sox. They're playing kind of a pseudo doubleheader today. He's had a really good year at AAA. It obviously is not showing out because the swing and miss hasn't come along for the ride. There were some insane K props. I went back and looked at like what people thought on 418 for Jack Leiter. 5.5 Ks was what they had the line listed at. 5.5. And yeah, he did not exceed that one for sure. But you work through some of his AAA stuff, and it looks really, 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 really good. They're just seeing what they have in him. I think Texas, this is kind of a lost season coming off of last year's World Series. I think they're okay with it. But Jack Leiter is the guy that I'm going to be trying to fire up. Is he the same as you?
No, I have a much worse guy.
Kyle Freeland.
In lineups for me, but there's really nothing I was able to do to make him show up in less lineups for me. Do you want to take a guess?
I said Kyle Freeland.
Yeah, it is Kyle Freeland. He's the cheapest pitcher on the entire slate. He's going up against an offense that is terrible. Now, with that said, they're playing at Coors Field, the Miami Marlins. We know what could end up happening at Coors Field, but this is the second most popular offense on the entire slate, but very well could end up being the most popular offense because I don't think we have lineups for the Texas Rangers and Chicago White Sox, with that being the weird doubleheader situation. If we don't have that lineup heading into lock, let's see if it's come out. No, we haven't gotten those lineups. If we don't get those lineups before lock, I think we could see the Marlins being the most popular team. So it's really just a factor of how popular the Marlins are and a little bit of leverage to be had there. Because when I run everything through the Sims, I only get myself to 5% of Marlins stack. So I'm viewing them as a team that's a little bit overowned. And then in turn, I got Kyle Freeland as the cheapest pitcher on the slate, granting me some leverage. So he lands in lineups. Wouldn't play him in single entry. Wouldn't play him if you guys are playing like 1-2 lineups and large field stuff. But yeah, I get to him into ownership in the teens in my lineups for large field GPP. So I think that's a reasonable way to get some leverage and differentiate a lineup.
Yep, more than okay with it. Kyle Freeland, he's showing up in 4% of mine. I'll give him a little bit of a boost because again, the last 2 days, everything has kind of come up roses as I just do a little tap, taparoo every time that you say something like that. So I'll get to a little bit more Kyle Freeland.
Taparoo. Are you excited for Happy Gilmore too?
I am. I heard that New Jersey, there might be some stuff going down out there.
Yeah, because we talked about it yesterday. What was it? Where the Happy Gilmore 2 is being filmed at a golf course right near my house, and that was why I did consider trying to audition for it. But went into Morristown, the place where it was being held, the auditions, and 12,000 people showed up. It was the longest line I've ever seen in my entire life.
My God.
So we'll see. I'm excited for the movie, though. I think it'll end up being good.
Yeah, it'll be
awesome.
Anything
else that stands out to you on the cheap end of pitching?
Other than how bad it is? No. Jack Leiter getting to a little bit. A little bit over the field, sitting at around 11%. Walker Buehler, he's in like 3% of my lineups. For me, it's just being underweight to David Festa and taking like a couple of educated shots. Are you playing any Max Meyer? Because everything you said about Kyle Freeland can kind of be said about Max Meyer too.
Well, the difference is that the Rockies aren't as popular as the Marlins. We've got the Rockies expected for like 8.5% ownership as compared to the Marlins being a little bit over 12. So that really is the difference. And also the Rockies rate out higher in our data. We have the Rockies as being quite a bit less owned than the Marlins while also having higher top stack odds. So I don't see the same leverage, nor do I think it's as good of a spot for Max Meyer. There's a case to be made that Max Meyer has more talent than Kyle Freeland.
Would agree.
But it is, let's see, do I have any lineups?
That's kind of what I was getting at is like, at the end of the day, we can talk about the leverage aspect of it. I think I need still 12, 15, like I still need some type of upside. And like, it feels like going to both of them when Freeland's projected for like slightly more ownership and like, I kind of want to get myself to a little bit of Max Meyer. He's completely abysmal. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to defend Max Meyer. Anybody with like a 14.5% barrel percentage and a 17.5% K rate, that definitely ain't it. But there are no doubt strikeouts with Colorado, Tavar, McMahon, Doyle, Toglia, Cave, everybody north of a 27% strikeout or 25% strikeout rate. I suppose Brenton Doyle's a little bit lower, but my dear God, there are strikeouts available there if you have any type of stuff. And I think he's got a decent enough fastball slider that'll play eventually at the big league level. It's just not there yet.
Got some super chats here, and then I'll check to see if there's any other questions in Discord. I think we've wrapped up the DraftKings pitchers. Look at the FanDuel pitchers next. And the first question here from the Thunder, he wants to know balanced, chalky, or contrarian in the lineup generator today. I would say balanced lineups for an 8-game slate. So yes. Balanced is going to be my answer. Feel any strongly in a different way, Eric?
God, no.
All right. And then Chris Williams left his super chat. He says, great show like always, fella.
Thank you,
Hit
Chris.
the like button, people. Bring yourself some good karma. I'm not liking this slate, so just playing the turbo slate on DK that starts at 7:10 Central Time. Mind ranking the pitchers. All right, let's see. What is the turbo slate?
Turbo slate.
All right. Which slate is this? All right. Oh, so it's a 2-game slate. 2-game slate. So we've only got 4 pitchers to choose from. Corbin Burns. Oh my God, Chris, these pitchers are dog shit. He said that he doesn't want me to say the magic word. I don't know what the magic word is. Maybe it is these pitchers are dog shit.
Pineapple.
I'm gonna guess it's what it is. These pitchers are shit, Chris. You got Corbin Burns, Erod, Walker Buehler, Luis Severino. Number 1 pitcher just by default is Corbin Burns because he's so much better than all of these other guys. Yep. Also, the ownership is incredibly balanced. Corbin Burns projected for 55% ownership, Erod 48%, Walker Buehler 50%, Severino 48%. So ownership doesn't really come into play in this discussion. It's just which guys do we think are the best. I'm going to go Corbin Burns 1. Walker Buehler 2, Erod 3, Severino 4. Eric, give your best guess at a top 4.
Yeah, Corbin Burns 1, Erod 2, Severino 3, Buehler 4.
Chris Williams says it's not that slate.
What? You said the magic word, but different slate. I did say pineapple. Pineapple. Late turbo. So it's a different one. DK Turbo. Okay. So Rodon, Beto, Gore, Maeda, Griffin Canning, and Casey Kelly. Are those the ones we're talking about?
I guess. Now, with that said, I'm going to have to defend myself on this. If I'm not mistaken, Central Time is an hour different than Eastern Time. So if he said 7:10 Central Time, would that not be 8:10 Eastern Time, which is then that turbo slate? We'll look at the night slate too, but I
don't know. I think you're wrong, Greg. I think you're wrong because the customer is always right, and I I remember
All right,
fondly
fine.
last
All
week
right.
where I didn't get made fun
Redefine
of
it.
or
Central
told
time is
that I
actually an
suck
hour
or
and a
anything
half.
like that.
Central time is now an hour and a half difference from Eastern time.
Yeah, there you go.
It has been redefined.
Get fucked, Gregory.
All right,
Carlos
so let's do it
Rodon
for
is
the,
definitely
for the
one.
late slate.
Carlos Rodon is one. I don't know how far Beto's going to pitch into this game, but he's living the Beto Loca, and I definitely do like him to some extent. He's probably going to be 2 for me. Our data likes him as number 2 as well, so I think Rodon,
You
Beto.
still got the wrong slate.
God fucking damn it! What slate? God, just give me the answer.
So if he is now
It's not fair.
talking
He's
about
a baseball player.
So if he is talking about the late slate, that is Mets, Diamondbacks, and Orioles, Dodgers.
Yeah, and that's what I listed off.
You said Beto.
No, but I said the DK Knight slate before. That was what I broke down before. I gave the 4 pitchers for it before.
Okay, so
What?
Oh, okay.
I don't
you
see
know
it.
what?
We don't have it in our
Okay,
data.
that's what. Okay, I realize what it is. By the way, now I realize that Chris is correct, and I am once again wrong here because
Told
I
you.
was also looking at the turbo one in our tools, and yeah, they aren't lined up. So, all right, Chris is right. He did the math right on the time conversion, and I just fucked up here. Here are the pitchers: Freddie Peralta, Kyle Harrison, Jack Leiter, Toki Tucson, and that's also the order that I ranked them in the same order I just put out there. Peralta 1, fucking easy. Kyle Harrison 2, also pretty easy. Jack Leiter 3, Toki Tucson 4. 3 and 4, those guys are both dog shit. I like Jack Leiter a little bit better than Tucson, though.
I like Leiter a little bit more than Kyle Harrison. Kyle Harrison is going to die. So there you go.
All right. There we go. Did we fuck it up? Tremendously. Was Chris right? Yeah. Am I an idiot? Yes. Is Eric an idiot? Slightly more than me, but we're comparing like a 12 IQ to a 15 IQ trying to answer this question. Thank you for the super chat, Chris. Wow. We did our best to butcher that. And then Christoph said you said the magic word, but for a different slate. All right. Comment God says, long time, first time. Could you rank the LS stacks? What does LS stand for? Late slate, I assume?
Yeah.
And the late slate, oh boy. I'm going to assume he means Mets, Diamondbacks, Orioles, Dodgers.
I just want you to be wrong, whatever it is.
If not, just, I mean,
just take you out to the woodshed.
One of those pole vaulting poles that are 30
pineapple with a pineapple.
Yeah.
We've got late slate. Oh, this one's pretty easy for me. It's going to be Dodgers 1. Okay, I said that it was going to be easy, and now I'm kind of like second guessing myself.
By the way, keep asking us about obscure slates. We're really butchering the fuck out of this, so it can only get worse from here, or better. Who knows?
All right, probably not.
All right, so we've got on the late, assuming this is what we're talking about, which also we've kind of hit on a little bit before, but Mets, Diamondbacks, Orioles, Dodgers. So we have to rank those 4 teams our favorite ones to stack for this late slate. I'm going to go Mets 1, Orioles 2, Dodgers 3, Diamondback.
No, I was going to say
Mets 1,
Diamondbacks 2 for me, Baltimore
2,
3,
Orioles 3, Dodgers 4.
There you go. Yep, that's the exact order I'd put it in.
Keep asking us about weird questions, guys. It's going really well for us.
Yeah, this is fantastic. We really appreciate you guys going out of your way to find. This is probably, in a nutshell, us explaining this is probably why there's so much money to be made by playing every single slate on a specific day. Because we sound like absolute dum-dums trying to break down not the main slate, because that's what we've spent all of our time breaking down. That's also what everybody else has spent all of their time breaking down. And so now you're asking us specific nuanced questions about the evening only. How dare you? It's
in our defense also, there's like 17 turbo slates every day.
Today is absurd. Today,
and then it's very confusing too when I'm going looking at our tools, like look at the turbo slate and there's like 8 of them lined up and you click on the wrong one. Jordan's clicking on the wrong one. Eric's did that. We're figuring out the wrong times or whatever. I mean, it would be simply fixed if both of us weren't idiots. But I mean, this is the capacities we're working with. We can only go so far with our limited IQs.
Yeah, I'm sending.
Yeah, it's easy enough. Jordan's fault. And then Chris followed up. He said it's Rangers, White Sox, and Giants, Brewers. All right. So I think we've got it all figured out there. And I think that we were able to navigate that pretty well right there. And by the way, Malakar says that he likes the old format game by game. We've never done game by game for this show anyway.
Never.
And it still wouldn't have helped us because these are still different slates. So it wouldn't have made a difference.
Been here
but
for 4
let's
years.
go ahead and
never
go into Discord. Mr. Coolcam is asking us about favorite stacks on FanDuel. And for that, we'll talk about stacks in a little bit. First, though, I want to hit on the pitchers for FanDuel, and then we'll go and we'll talk about stacks we're liking overall for the slate. So on FanDuel, Eric, if you look at the pitcher exposures, you got the two popular pitchers on DraftKings. Here's what the field has done. They are only playing Freddie Peralta on FanDuel. He is 42% projected owned on FanDuel. Chris Sale is 13% owned. There's a massive price gap between them. I think this is pretty simple. Cash games, play Freddie Peralta. In tournaments, to differentiate your line, just play Chris Sale instead of Freddie Peralta. You're getting him for a quarter of the ownership.
Correct.
Are there any of the really low-owned pitchers that you like at all on FanDuel? To me, it's just Chris Sale.
Chris Sale. Just play Chris Sale. He's going to just smash souls. I'm a broken person in a broken world. The Minnesota Twins don't want me to be happy, and I need a vacation, and I must leave.
There we go. So if you're looking at some of these other pitchers, I mean, Festa is only 7% owned. He's $7,700 on FanDuel. That is some appeal, but Chris Sale to me is really the guy you want to go to be contrarian there. Any final thoughts about pitcher or any turbo slates today, Eric? Do you have additional thoughts on?
I really don't have for the latter part of that question. No, for the former part of that question, make some educated stands, but like really, this is not a slate to be jamming anybody on the cheap end, and that's generally where I like to jam some of the different contrarian pitchers to give me different lineups or give me exposure to certain stacks. But a lot of the expensive stacks are in more difficult spots. Looking at you, the Dodgers, I'm still going to get to a little bit of them, but it's going to be very, very nominal and probably not make or break my night. So for me, Godspeed to me and Joe Musgrove. Here we go.
All right, let's go ahead and start looking at some stacks. And if you guys have any other lineups that you want Jordan to check out, either hit me up in our Discord channel and I'll text him over to Jordan, throw it into the YouTube chat. He sees them and he could plug them in. We'll evaluate some of your lineups. But let's hit on stacks. And the first thing I want to ask you is, how do you think this, because the Texas Rangers are expected to pull a lot of ownership against Tucson and the Chicago White Sox. But that game is currently in what, the 6th inning or something? It is,
Correct.
Bottom of the 6th inning. And it's tied. That game can end up going into extra innings. When does it lock? It locks today at 8:10 Eastern time. If that game goes into extra innings, we might not have that lineup until either very close to the start of the game, or hell, if it goes into very extra innings, the game might lock before it even ends up kicking off where we get lineups there. How is this going to impact the slate and how you're building your lineups?
I'm going to be playing Texas. I don't see any way around it. Like, why wouldn't I like getting to Texas with the unknown of it?
Well, the risk being that if the game is still either ongoing or if the game locks before we get the lineup, you could end up playing somebody who doesn't even end up playing.
Yeah, I know. So here's what you do. You don't play Robbie Grossman because he won't be in the lineup the second time around. It would be very, very shocking to me to have him in there when you have Josh Smith and you're going to be going up against righties. So for me, the projected becomes pretty clear. I think catcher is probably the one that you always want to be a little bit nervous or a little bit hyper aware of, because Jonah Heim, the chances of him catching this first game and then catching the second game goes down drastically. And as I look around the industry, there's a lot of projecteds that I don't agree with, that I don't think are correct. So you can make that informed, but I'm pretty positive Carson Kelly is who ends up catching this second game. I think he's one of the best plays on the slate because I'm looking at multiple places where they still have Jonah Heim in. I'm not saying that it couldn't possibly be Jonah Heim and that it's impossible, but if you put Jonah Heim in and he isn't catching in that game, you get to 8-10 p.m., you can global swap the entire thing to Carson Kelly. I guess you can't do the inverse, so maybe that's why people are putting in Jonah Heim as the projected catcher. But I'm pretty positive it ends up being Carson Kelly. Does Jonah Heim end up as a guy who DHs? I think that's kind of the interesting part about working through this lineup. But there's no doubt that there's some obscurity to having this situation. And the more you're able to capitalize it, considering they have north of a 5 implied total, And they're going to get Touki Toussaint, the corpse of, who can induce ground balls from time to time, but just overall has not been a major league pitcher for quite some time, other than when, called upon in specific bullpen situations with the Angels, but has not been good here with the White Sox. So from Chad Kuhl to him, it's kind of strange to me because Chad Kuhl's been a closer for them, or like an 8th inning setup guy for them for quite some time. But we'll see how this first game plays out. I think we're looking at a really good opportunity to get some leverage, though, by playing some low-owned Texas pieces based on how that lineup rolls out.
What about in the scenario where the game is still on? What if there's an extra innings game that's still ongoing at the 8-10 lock?
Well, then hold on to your butts, I suppose. If you're playing one lineup, you got to kind of know what your risk portfolio is, but like, look at the implied totals of everybody on this entire slate today. Like I think the fun of the slate is having Texas on it. And some people probably find it to be a huge pain in the ass headache. But if you're not playing Coors, the highest implied total that you're looking at on the slate, both in Vegas and in our tools, is Texas. So I'm going to play Texas. I'm going to just jam them to some extent. Make sure you understand, like, I would find it very unlikely Josh Smith wasn't in the lineup today. And I would find it very unlikely that Carson Kelly wasn't catching. Like, those are two things that kind of want to lock in. Not saying that it's completely out of the sort that either of those things could change, but yeah, let's party.
Let's see. I think we had a super chat that came in here, and then we'll talk about Coors Field. We've got Chuck Deuces says, Noah Moon says that I don't make money at DFS. Well, he's wrong. I don't. I don't. If that's his opinion, okay. That's
just like your opinion, man. But also, there's facts, and there's these things called 1099s. But Noah's never got one, so he doesn't know about them.
If you want to look through all of the slates for the year, like, it's all public. You can literally download the CSVs and just look it all up if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with my year. I'm not as happy as Greg is. Greg, he absolutely smashed. But I'm having a good year.
I'm not going to get into a dick measuring contest with somebody with a micro penis. What's the point? Yeah, take your pants off, Eric. Let's get banned from YouTube.
Hell yeah. We're never going to reach 100,000 subs. I'll make sure of it.
Nah, that's going to be a lot of butt sex between us to hit those kinds of numbers, or just football starting in a couple of weeks. We've got here, whose lineup is this one, Jordan's? All right, looking pretty good. He's got an 8% sim ROI as long as it's positive. I'm not going to tell you to change anything. So Paul, looking good as far as I'm concerned. And let's talk about Coors Field now, Eric. And then we'll talk about some of the FanDuel stacks. We'll answer Mr. Coolcam's question. What are you going to be doing with Coors Field today? Between the Rockies and the Marlins, do you have a preference between the two teams playing in Colorado?
Yeah, I do. Today, I'm going to definitely be playing more Colorado than Miami. Max Meyer, 14.6% barrel percentage has been getting absolutely obliterated. And for some reason, we are getting lower ownership on them as opposed to Kyle Freeland going up against Miami. So I don't really know what to tell you. Yeah, it's weird. It's just weird.
I have way more exposure to the Colorado Rockies. That came out weird out of my mouth. The Colorado Rockies than I do to the Miami Marlins. And I mean, there's two reasons for this. First off, we've got the Colorado Rockies. I mentioned it earlier. We've got the Rockies with higher top stack odds than the Marlins. We've also got the Rockies lower owned than the Marlins. On the whole, the Rockies, I think the lineup might be slightly cheaper, or we have it. Oh, no, never mind. It is more expensive. I think that is what's kind of driving down some of the ownership there. But even with that said, we do have the Rockies overall as being with more positive leverage. We've got them now 12.5% chance to be the top stack, 8.5% ownership. So I prefer the Rockies side of this game. And then on the Marlins side, going up against Kyle Freeland, I think the Freeland matchup is maybe a little bit more difficult than the one against Myers. But to me, it's really just you're getting the Rockies at 8% ownership compared to the 12.5% ownership on the Rockies. I get exposure to both of them, but I'm a little bit underweight to the field on Miami, coming in overweight to the field on Colorado. The team I have the most exposure to overall, it is the Texas Rangers, Eric. I'm still not sure if I want to play them in single entry or not. I'm leaning towards a yes, just because even though they are projected to be pulling ownership, I do think that what we had talked about before with the current game going on and the fact that that lineup, even if we do get that lineup before the game starts, it's almost certainly going to be after lock. I think it's going to prohibit people from playing that game as much as what the ownership suggests. So the Rangers are overall my favorite stack on the slate.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. Gregory comes to the dock side. He sets up a hypothetical question, and then he comes in to say, oh, I'm playing them in single entry, and look how sharp I am, even though I brought up all the points.
There we go. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I was I'm on the same page as you with the Rangers. I was throwing out some things like, what are you going to do if there's the lineup not coming in? I think that's overall going to be something, though, that should play in our benefit. We have the ability to make alterations to our lineups if we have to on short notice, if anything weird comes out with lineups right before that game starts. I think the game is going to, and it's really hard to capture with data as well what's going to happen with the ownership because of some of the unknowns there. So I'm with you. I like the Texas Rangers a whole lot. Are there any contrarian stacks that you like? Because overall, the Rockies, while we do have them as being under-owned, it's not like they're a super low-owned stack. The Rangers, as well as the Marlins, they are expected, at least as of now, to be pulling some ownership. Are there really low-owned stacks that are important to you?
Yeah, Atlanta is going to be important to me. They're not pulling any ownership. Sub 5%. David Festa is going to be really popular. This is just like, we've been doing this how long now? We've been doing this all year, especially in the last couple of weeks. We have been really, really in tune with like when somebody is overowned. David Festa definitely has a chance of racking up some strikeouts and being useful to people on this slate, but there's also the chance that he gets completely hammer-fisted by the Atlanta Braves here, and I would not be shocked if that was today. Oh boy, I have a lot of Atlanta Braves.
The Atlanta Braves are the team I currently have the third most exposure to. Number one is the Texas Rangers. Two is the Colorado Rockies. Three is the Atlanta Braves. So I'm on the same page as you. A lot of it has to do with the overall quality of the Braves lineup. They don't suck. They've got a matchup that's, I'd say, a plus matchup against David Festa. And Festa's popular. These are the spots that you and I pick on all the time. So I think the Atlanta Braves make a whole lot of sense as well. We've got the Braves now. We did an ownership update. We've got them for not like zero ownership or anything. The really low owned teams on the slate are the Cardinals, the Giants, the Twins. I'm not interested in any of those spots. But then you got the next tier of teams, which is like the Mets, the Dodgers, the Braves, in terms of teams that are grouped together as far as ownership goes. And of those squads, the Braves are clearly the one that stands out the most to me. I don't have really any meaningful exposure to any other team that's 5% or less owned as a stack.
Nor do I. I don't think you should. It's not a slate where I think that that's what's required of us. And I think it's pretty clear cut for me. I'm going to play a decent amount of Coors Field. I'm going to play a lot of Texas. I'm going to play Atlanta as leverage, and I'm going to get a smattering of like 2% of some of these other stacks. It's going to be an interesting one. Oh, we're getting James McCann catching. Has he been caddying for Corbin Burns this year?
Off the top of my head, I don't know which
I don't either.
catchers have been to which pitchers on the Orioles.
It's just an interesting thing because obviously we know how good Adley Rutschman is as a defensive catcher, and James McCann is an obvious downgrade, but I guess I've never clocked whether or not he's been caddying for him at certain times. But yeah, James McCann is catching and Gunnar Henderson is not. So it's interesting.
Any other stacks that are important to your lineups? The teams that I have double-digit exposure to are the Braves, the Rockies, the Rangers. I don't have any other team that I have more than 10% exposure to as a stack. I will throw in, I think the White Sox could be a little bit interesting just because I also think that they could be a team that people aren't going to want to play at all if the lineup comes in late. So that's a team that isn't going to be crazy popular, I think is at least worth considering. But still, they're pulling 6% ownership, which is around where I have them. Anything else on the DraftKings stacks that you want to talk about? If not, we'll talk about the FanDuel side.
Go to FanDuel.
All right. So over on FanDuel, we did get the question from Mr. Coolcam. If you're playing one lineup on FanDuel, which team would you be looking to stack, Eric? The ownership looks way different over here. The Rockies are 19% owned. The Marlins are 14% owned. Every other offense, single-digit owned. The Red Sox are more popular on FanDuel. They are 9.6% owned. You're playing one lineup on FanDuel, and you have to enter it right now. Which team are you stacking?
Probably St. Louis or San Diego. We didn't talk about him, but I mean, obviously, there's a lot of leverage going their direction on this slate that you're not really getting anywhere else. I mean, we're just getting such heavy ownership on Colorado. So the first thing that's very obvious between DK and FanDuel is I would be getting away, right? It'd almost be like the exact inverse, where on DK, I'm getting to more Colorado, getting to less Miami. Here, I'd get to more Miami, a little less Colorado. Wouldn't be fading Colorado by any means, but I guess the other way you could maybe look at this, Toronto's pulling a lot of ownership. Maybe kind of want to look at Milwaukee here up against Harrison. I mean, I'm looking at the FanDuel pitchers as well, seeing where you're getting a little bit different ownership. And Kyle Harrison isn't pulling any ownership, so that's a bummer. But yeah, Chris Bassett is. He's the fourth most popular pitcher there. I'll go this way. I think I'll go Atlanta if I were playing one lineup. And if I'm playing like 3 lineups over there, Atlanta, Miami, and Milwaukee.
So the big difference on FanDuel is that it doesn't have the Chicago and Texas game. I kind of wish it was left off of DraftKings as well, just because of the weirdness of the timing and the doubleheader. If I'm building one lineup over on FanDuel, and also, I mean, the ownership looks way different without that game being included there, and then all the ownership going to the Coors game. Clearly, the Rockies and the Marlins are the 2 teams that you would expect to have the most success if we were just saying which team is expected to be the highest scoring. The ownership is so high there. I mean, we've got, what is it? About a third of the field is expected to be stacking either the Marlins or the Rockies. I like the Orioles a good amount going up against Walker Buehler. They're projected for 7% ownership, and Buehler's just been a disaster this year. He's now had, 2 Tommy John surgeries. The velocity is still there. That's a positive for him. He's got a 6.09 ERA, 5.28 expected ERA. He's got a 21.2% home run to fly ball rate. The strikeout rate for Walker Buehler at 16.9%. He's a mess right now. For the future, could Buehler be better? Absolutely. I just don't think it's going to happen this year. Earlier in the year, I was playing Walker Buehler, and I think you were a little bit, probably not as much as me, just thinking that Walker Buehler, he's going to work himself back into shape. He's going to get back into the Cy Young type form that he was in a couple of years ago. It's never happened. I've given up on him for the purposes of this season. I like the Orioles on FanDuel as a lesser-owned team to be getting to. Walker Buehler's had plenty of blow-up starts. He's only pitched 44 innings this year, so it's a small sample size, but it hasn't looked great. There's nothing positive in his numbers that suggests anything good is coming for Walker Buehler, so I think he's somebody who's reasonable to stack against. Anything else you want to talk about as far as offenses go, Eric? If not, then we could do our home run picks.
Let's do home run picks.
All right, Eric, you know the rules. No Coors Field, but you can pick anybody else to homer today, and we'll also read off some of the picks from Discord. Oh, actually, some questions came in to Discord as well. Ethan7 wanted to know if we have any love for Baltimore. Yeah, just hit on them a little bit. And then Brandon, a.k.a. Russell, wants to know who are our most rostered Rockies. Also wants to know, is it viable to play both sides of Coors Field in one lineup? Yeah, absolutely. My individual most rostered players from the Rockies are... And let's see. Most rostered hitters for me from the Rockies are Ryan McMahon, number 1, Charlie Blackmon, number 2, Drew Romo, number 3, Ezekiel Tovar, 4, Nolan Jones, 5. So those are my top 5 hitters in that order from the Rockies. But now, Eric, Dong picks. Who's going yard today?
All right, I'm going to give you a contrarian one. I'm kind of torn because Carson Kelly is going to be really, really low on. I think I'm going to play a lot of him in large field just because, I think people are going to kind of overlook it. But I think a lot of people overlook how good Gary Sanchez has been against lefties this season. It's absolutely absurd. He gets Kyle Harrison, who gives up a lot of fly ball contact, north of 15-degree launch angle, 44% hard hit, 10.2% barrel percentage. And Gary Sanchez, 18.5-degree launch angle against left-handed pitching and 82 plate appearances with balls in play, and a 271 expected ISO. He deserves to have more homers than just 5 against this handedness. He's batting 5th today. He's up there a little bit higher in the order. I love him as a one-off. Obviously, my Milwaukee stacks he'll be a part of, but on DK, I don't have as many as what I would have on FanDuel, looking at the comparison between the lineups that I just made over on FanDuel. But I love getting to Gary Sanchez as your catcher today as a contrarian piece.
All right. We got also a super chat from Chris Williams. He said he will gift us 50 memberships if we ban the Muppet who keeps bashing you guys in the channel. So I have never once, other than like the bots. Remember, we used to get the porn bots that would show up. And those are the only people I've ever banned from the YouTube chat. For the first time ever, I've banned somebody because we're getting paid money for it. Chris Williams, he sent us a super chat. He said that he's going to gift out YouTube memberships if we ban this clown from chat. So what can I do? I was gifted money for it. I've done lesser things for less amounts of money. What are you going to do? We're being paid money for it. So Noah's been hidden from the chat here. So there you go. Your wishes come true, Chris Williams. That's all it took. $10, and I will delete people from the YouTube chat. That's
you should see what he'll do for 20. Oh my God. Yeah. Daddy needs a new bicycle.
He could 15 is really, you don't even have to go all the way up to 20. 15, and I'll be bent over backwards on the channel here. But there we go. Chris, thank you very much for supporting the channel. Eric went with Gary Sanchez for his home run pick. Where do I want to go? I'm going to go with Marcus Semien. I've got Marcus Semien right now in 26% of my lineups. We have talked about the Texas Rangers being a stack that you and I do end up getting to a good amount of, Eric. Marcus Semien, that's going to be my dong pick. Let's see what we have from the chat now. And also, shout out Chris Williams. He gifted out the 50 YouTube memberships. So, Chris, thank you very much. We do appreciate it. And let's see now if we could get some home run picks. We got Michael Sorek going with Vladdy Guerrero Jr. And now, oh, by the way, some of the home run picks are going to get better because we got this wave now, just a typhoon, a hurricane, just of the gifted memberships from Chris Williams here. So we're going to have to read in between some of the people getting memberships to find the home run picks. We got Sebastian Saint. He's going with Gunnar Henderson for a double dong night. Malakar's bringing back Teoscar Hernandez. So not only have I bullied Malakar out of no longer picking Teoscar Hernandez, I think I bullied him back into picking Teoscar Hernandez. So,
what a guy.
Good luck figuring out who you're picking tomorrow now, Malakar. Teoscar Hernandez is back. We've got William Westry going with Adley Rutschman. I saw Gunnar Henderson as well from Einsteinium. Corey Seager from JB Hughes. Eric Johnson is going with Matt Olson. Then we've got Jaron Duran from Dick to Go. Anthony Santander and Teoscar Hernandez from your mom. We've got Hill is the pick from Mario Banks. We've got Corey Seager. I think I read that one off. Dangerous Dave is going with Vlad Jr. Romy Gonzalez from Trizzle, Maine. Jake Rogers is the pick there from somebody. Where'd it go? There it is. Spanish Martin. Then we've got Jock Peterson from Javier Hernandez. We've got Perdomo and Ozuna from Comment God. We've got Shohei Ohtani from Anthony Harris. Chris Williams going with Corey Seager. We've got Corey Lee as well from Eric Johnson. Whit Merrifield from Patrick Maduke. I don't think I pronounced his last name correctly. JB Hughes went with Luis Robert. Mark Ventos from Mark Campbell. Mookie Betts from Wes Bolden. And then Ramos from Ryan Stubbs. And then Jackson Holiday from Keith Vape. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, support all you guys who watched in the show, hang out, like, and say nice things in the chat. If you're somebody who shows up, just say negative things in the chat. To be honest, I don't really give a shit. Free world, do whatever the hell you want. But if people pay me money to ban you from chat, I kind of have to follow through and do that. So, Chris, as always, thank you for all that and supporting the channel. Have a great night, guys. See you back here tomorrow. And tomorrow also, college football sims are going to be going live on this site, so go check that out. Peace out.